Mr. Speaker, the end of the answer was different from the beginning of the answer. What on earth is the point of having a lawyer rather than a leader as Prime Minister if he cannot even get the law right on a matter of national security in Westminster today? A single exchange in the House of Commons may well have altered the trajectory of a political career. Mr. Speaker, the end of the answer was different from the beginning of the answer. The line was calm, precise, and devastating. From that moment, the Prime Minister was on notice. The follow-up landed even harder. What is the use of having a lawyer instead of a leader if he cannot get the law right on a matter of national importance? What followed was not theater. It was demolition. With a tone of surgical restraint, Conservative MP Kemi delivered one of the most measured yet damaging interrogations of a sitting Prime Minister in recent memory. There were no raised voices, no partisan dramatics, only facts, timelines, and quiet conviction. Her charge was that the government may have obscured the truth behind a collapsed espionage case, one that strikes at the heart of Britain's national security. At the center of the controversy was a spy prosecution linked to alleged Chinese infiltration inside Parliament. The case involved MI5 amassed evidence and saw charges filed only for the proceedings to be abruptly abandoned. The government's explanation was vague, contradictory, and far from convincing. Badenoch entered the chamber prepared with documents in hand, dates verified, and quotes recorded, intent on holding the Prime Minister to account for his words and his record on China. What ensued was less a debate than a dissection, a live demonstration of how political authority unravels under forensic scrutiny. The session began in solemnity with MPs standing in silence for Sir David A.S., the Conservative MP murdered in Takas AA 2021, a reminder of the very real dangers faced by public servants and of the gravity of the security failures now under discussion. Against that somber backdrop, the collapse of a major spy case carried extraordinary weight. When Badenoch rose, she went straight to the heart of the matter. Why did this case collapse, she demanded. How could the government fail to supply the evidence prosecutors required? The Prime Minister's reply was evasive, a deflection wrapped in procedure. The evidence, he said, had been submitted back in 2023 under the previous government, in other words, not my problem. But Badenoch was not seeking excuses. She wanted accountability. Her first point was drawn from the UK Integrated Review of 2021, which formally designated China as the biggest state-based threat to Britain's economic security, not rhetoric but government policy. Her second piece of evidence came from MI5's Director General, who in 2022 publicly named China as a threat to the United Kingdom, an official warning, unequivocal and on the record. The logic was inescapable. If the government knew China was a threat, if MI5 had sounded the alarm, and if the Crown Prosecution Service had already approved charges on credible evidence, then why did the case fall apart? The Prime Minister faltered. He tried to reframe, reminding MPs that earlier ministers had avoided the word enemy. When referring to Beijing, he cited a former foreign secretary who once called it impossible, impractical, and unwise to label China a threat. Badenoch did not blink. She countered with a quote from the current leader of the opposition, who in 2023 said Britain should not describe China as a foe. Then, with deliberate precision, she turned the focus back to the Prime Minister himself, reminding the House that he had once admitted he had shied away from calling China a threat. At that moment, the chamber's mood shifted. Members leaned forward. Badenoch had reframed the entire debate. This was no longer about party politics. It was about a bipartisan reluctance to confront reality. Both major parties, she argued, had softened their stance toward Beijing, and the consequence was now laid bare, a national security failure no one wished to own. The Prime Minister made a final attempt to recover, accusing Badenoch of quoting selectively. "If you read the full statement," he insisted, "I did describe China as a threat." Her response was controlled and unflinching. "You can read the beginning of a quote all you like," she said, "but those spies were charged under a Conservative government and released under Labour. You still have not answered the question." The silence that followed said more than any sound could. This was more than a powerful Commons moment. It was a political inflection point, one where composure, preparation, and conviction exposed a vulnerability at the very top of government. Then came the turning point, the moment that changed everything. Kemi Badenoch dropped the political equivalent of a detonation. Citing an exclusive from the Sunday Times, she alleged that Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister's own national security advisor, had convened a secret meeting to discuss the collapsed China spy trial. Her question to the Prime Minister was simple and lethal. Did that meeting take place, or is the Sunday Times lying? The Commons fell silent, all eyes locked on the Prime Minister. After a pause long enough to measure its weight, he confirmed that a meeting had indeed taken place in September. But he insisted it did not involve the National Security Advisor discussing evidence. That answer only deepened suspicion. Badenoch pressed further. If there was a meeting, who was there? What was discussed? And most critically, why did the Security Minister insist that only the Deputy National Security Advisor had full authority to drop the case? The Prime Minister stuck to his line. No ministers involved, no political advisors, just one official acting alone. The claim strained credibility, and Badenoch made sure it sounded as implausible as it was. Her voice sliced through the chamber. Is the government seriously suggesting that one man took this decision in isolation, that he spoke to no one, not the National Security Advisor, not the Home Secretary, not Downing Street? The air grew taut. The absurdity of the claim spoke for itself. Then Badenoch shifted gear from politician to prosecutor. The facts, she said, were indisputable. In April 2024, the Crown Prosecution Service brought charges against 2 individuals accused of spying for China within Parliament. MI5 was directly involved. Prosecutors declared the evidence sound and the charges correct under the law at the time. Then came a change in government and suddenly the case collapsed. No new evidence, no public explanation, just silence and spin. Badenoch's question cut to the heart of accountability. What changed? The charges were filed under the last government, the collapse under this one. Some things, she argued, clearly had. Under growing pressure, the Prime Minister promised transparency. He vowed to release witness statements and records to show Parliament what had been submitted in 2023 and what came after. But he said not today. Procedure, he claimed, must come first. Badenoch was not buying it. She dismissed the pledge as yet another delay tactic. If there is nothing to hide, she said, publish the documents now, the statements, the meeting minutes, the CPS correspondence. Show the country the truth. Her implication was unmistakable. Hesitation suggested guilt. Then the Prime Minister made his fatal misstep. Rather than defend his position, he attacked the messenger, sneering that Badenoch was neither a lawyer nor a leader. It was a cheap shot and it backfired instantly. The chamber erupted. Personal insults in Parliament may be permitted, but they are rarely smart. They expose weakness, and this one did. Badenoch remained composed. She did not rise to the bait. Instead, she turned his words into a weapon. Calmly, she reminded MPs that the same Prime Minister had recently expressed full confidence in a man linked to a convicted pedophile. Her retort was icy. "Forgive us if we do not trust a word," he says. It landed with force. The impact was immediate, but Badenoch was not finished. She accused the government of orchestrating a cover-up, a charge that set the chamber ablaze. She listed the excuses. Civil servants blamed, the media blamed, even the previous government blamed, everyone but those in power now. And then came the accusation that would linger for months. A national security case collapsed because this government was too weak to stand up to China. The effect was seismic. The Prime Minister's attempts to respond were drowned out by the roar of the Commons. The perception had already taken hold. Weakness on China, weakness on security, weakness in leadership.